Call to order for our Human Services Committee. There was through 2 Senate files that we were going to hear today, as well as our priority admissions review panel report, which, as you know, 2 years ago, as Kevin Magnuson was up here talking to Jim, I'll never forget Jim and I, this was like middle of the night, Brad Johnson and Kevin Magnuson, and meeting with Jody Harpstead and really talking about, you know, what's missing, what's needed, and I think that we established that connection for them, and so it's nice to see that they were part of that process. Senator Abler? No. We are pulling Senate File 815, which is the Community First Services and Supports requirements for support workers to qualify for enhanced rates modification. The good senator from Minneapolis is not with us. He has an appointment, and so we decided to pull it. But, senators, I do want us to know that the conversation we started last week, just in the history of the CFSS conversation, I think we should still have that conversation. And even Senator Abel, you had talked about what's missing, what's needed. Maybe when you come back from your transportation, we can talk later, gentlemen, on that would be great. And also, members, the upcoming hearings on Wednesday, Senator Abler, the Community Care Hub Grant, Senator Mohammed, her license violations, provisions, modifications. Senator Utke, you got a twofer that day, so if you got a third one you want to add, we can probably get that in there too. But I think that's what I got for Wednesday. Am I missing anything, members? Oh, I do have a question. So there's this bill that's out there, the Office of OIG bill that's floating around out there, and apparently some people in our folks in the corner office think that we have jurisdiction. We have a part jurisdiction over that, and I said, no, we don't. And so they want us to make a decision, and I think, you know, honestly, you can't make this one up, right? We don't have jurisdiction on OIG. I don't think we need to hear it. Members, are you okay with us not hearing that bill? Unless you really, really want to hear it, we'll do it, but I'm leaving it up to the group here, so. Senators Abler first, Mayquade, then Rasmussen.
So it's in the committee? They send it to us? Or
they want to send it here. It's on the list. There's like 6 or 7 committees it needs to go to, but Senator Abler, we don't have any jurisdiction on that at all. I don't know, you know, and I was making fun of the fact the corner office upstairs, yeah, you know, they can't figure out jurisdictions and they think we have jurisdiction on that, which we don't, so.
Well, Mr. Chair, would it affect Human Services, or who is it going to be OIGing?
The department, it's going to be the Health and Human Services, so it's the other committee that you serve on with this Wicklands committee. That's what
this would be overseeing some human services programs. So
that is correct.
If you have time, I don't mind seeing it. Senator Rasmussen, Mayquade may have an opinion. It's quite a discussion topic, I know. So anyway.
All right, that's whatever. Good. Thank you, Senator Abler.
Whatever position, but I think it might be all right.
Senator Mayquade, to that point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will say, as a member of the State and Local Gov Committee, we did hear there, and because there are federal requirements under federal law on how we have OIGs for the federally funded programs, they're exempted from that bill. And it specifically says that because there's different.
It does?
Yes, there's different requirements than what we have, what the bill is proposing to do. And so I would say it doesn't fall under our jurisdiction. Not that the bill's not important or interesting, but our part is specifically carved out because we can't do for Medicaid services, for example, what the bill is purporting to do. We have different federal requirements.
So that answers Senator Abler's question that's on there. That's interesting. So you flushed that out in state and local government. You guys did. All right. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think, you know, if the committee has time, I think it would be valuable to hear the bill for a couple reasons. One is to actually understand the distinction that Senator Mayquade talked about, and just to make sure we understand what this new Office of Inspector General will be doing and what it will not be doing. And then, you know, within our budget area, we also have a lot of areas that are not Medicaid funded, that are just funded through general fund grants, especially into substance use disorder. And I think just given that within our committee's jurisdiction, we've seen, unfortunately, a large amount of large-scale human services fraud, it could be worth the conversation. But also understand the time constraints that the committee faces and the bill author faces.
No, it's well done. Thank you, Senator. So did that, Senator McQuaid, because it's got like 6 or 7 stops, and I think when I looked at our committee makeup, everybody in this committee is gonna hear it in one. To what Senator Rasmussen's point is, was that stuff talked about in state and local government at all?
Mr. Chair, the part about human services?
Yeah.
Yes. During the bill walkthrough, it was, and I think Senator Rasmussen, you had a bill right after that, so you might have heard part of this, yes. They specifically talked about who is in, and then there's a specific section of who is out of this bill, and it's not just human services. There were, I think, 2 other agencies that have part of their federal funding also requires them to order their OIG functions differently. And so we are not the only committee or the only department that is exempted like that. And so I would imagine in that case, those cases as well, it doesn't go to those committees, whatever they might be. I forget what they are.
No, it's fine. I mean, so why would somebody upstairs think that we had jurisdiction over it when clearly we don't? Do you have
Mr. Chair, maybe because it says human services in there, even though it's under a part about exemptions.
Totally exempt, so anything that we touch is our thing. All right, Senator Rasmussen, isn't that interesting? It totally exempt, so we're not even part of that, so. All right, I was 50-50, I'm still 50-50, so you guys made it, thank you. Senator Westlin, service dog provisions, modifications, and housing accommodations for persons, people with disabilities. We have commissioner. How do you say that? Your former, what is it? State rep, commissioner. What's your title there, Jeff? Jeff Johnson, executive director, Can Do Canines. He was where I lived in Champlin. You were our county commissioner at one time in your life. So Senate File 1317. It's all yours, Bonnie.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I always figure whoever brings the dog or the babies is going to be the most favorite senator in any committee. Senate File 1317 is designed to allow for service dog trainers to house service dogs in training without being prohibited from doing that or incurring fees by homeowners associations. Assistance dog organizations raise and train service dogs for people with disabilities. These dogs are often vital medical equipment that changes lives. Currently, there are 3 assistance dog organizations in Minnesota that are certified by Assistance Dogs International, the leading worldwide authority in the assistance dog industry. These 3 organizations rely on well over 1,000 volunteers across Minnesota to raise and socialize dogs starting from a few months old to about 3 years old. These dogs live with their trainers and are taken everywhere in order to properly socialize them for their future careers. Currently, HOAs cannot place restrictions on someone with a working, fully trained assistance dog. This bill extends this circumstance to someone training a service dog. There are instances where someone wants to volunteer to host a service dog, but is prevented from doing so based on an HOA rule prohibiting canines of a certain size or canines in general. The bill language itself is fairly straightforward. Section 2 provides definitions and defines a service dog in training as a canine in a program supervised by an Assistance Dogs International or an International Guide Dog Federation accredited organization. It establishes that a person training a service dog is entitled to full and equal access to all housing accommodations and cannot be charged an extra fee for housing the service dog in training. It does allow for a landlord or HOA board to request written certification from the organization supervising the training of the canine. And again, we have been working with stakeholders on this bill, including representatives of HOAs, and as my understanding that no one is opposed to this bill, that this is something that has been negotiated by all of the parties. And so we have included language in this bill to address concerns about homeowners keeping pet dogs and falsely claiming that they are training a service dog. And that is part of the reason why we have the requirement that they have to be affiliated with an actual organization. We've worked with the Community Association Institute, which represents the HOAs in Minnesota, and they do not have any concerns with this bill. And with me is Jeff Johnson, the Executive Director of Can-Do Canines, to give his testimony, and he has his friend Tucker with him.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Jeff Johnson. I am Executive Director at Can-Do Canines based in New Hope, and I do have Tucker with me. Tucker is 3 and will soon be placed with a mobility client and change her life, as these dogs often do. If I can, I'll just tell you a little bit about Can-Do Canines and then the genesis of this bill. We've been around since 1989 as an organization. We're one of the largest assistance dog organizations in the country. And we serve people with mobility challenges, seizure disorders, deafness or severe hearing loss, type 1 diabetes, and childhood autism. And we also place dogs in facilities like hospitals and community service providers. We rely on private donations, not government money, and we estimate that it costs about $45,000 to raise and train each of these dogs, but we give them away free of charge because few of our clients could even come close to affording to buy a dog at that cost. We have 51 employees, but we rely very heavily on volunteers to help us raise, train, and especially socialize these dogs over about a 2.5 to 3 year period. Some of those volunteers are inmates in 9 different Minnesota and Wisconsin prisons who raise dogs for us, but even more are individuals and families throughout the state who love and raise these dogs and then amazingly give them back to us so they can change someone's life. Our volunteers are amazing, and they allow us to do what we do. Our volunteers host dogs anywhere from a few days at a time to over 2 years at a time. And over the years, we've had potential volunteers who wanted to raise dogs for us, but despite owning their home, their HOA prohibited them from doing that based on general rules about pet dogs. Today, we're asking that the law prohibiting HOAs from restricting active service dogs in people's homes be extended to service dogs in training. It will allow us and organizations like us in Minnesota to recruit more volunteers and ultimately to change more lives. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Members? Senator Etke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just got a question about the dogs that you train. Do they all start as young dogs, or can you use and train dogs throughout, I'm sure the early years of their life, because you want
Yes.
people to get some good years of service out of them, but what's the general dog that you start with?
Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Senator, we breed almost all of our own dogs. We actually have a breeding facility in New Germany, west of the Twin Cities a little ways. And then we also get some dogs donated to us, especially poodles. We mostly breed labs, and if you have allergies, that doesn't work very well. So if we have a client with allergies, we will usually use a poodle. And we also try to rescue a dog every year or so. The success rate isn't very good, but we still try because that was how our organization was founded. We do occasionally work with someone who has a pet dog that is young and help them to train that dog as an assistance dog, but I'd say that's maybe 2 to 4% of our general population.
Senator Etke, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I just like to watch. You're just taking it all in.
Yeah, he's a good boy.
So he said New Germany, Etke. I mean, there was a certain senator on this table that when he was a House member, I believe there was a certain bike path between New Germany and Lester Prairie that 2 of us might have been involved with many years ago, Senator Gruenhagen.
Yes.
I think Senator Etke moves that Senate File 1317 be recommended to pass and be referred to Judiciary and Public Safety Committee.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Senator Etke moves. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Senator Westlin. You and Tucker and Jeff get to go to the next stop where
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
hopefully it's Judiciary.
We are a deliberative body, Mr. Chair.
Members, next up in your packet is the Priority Admissions Review Panel Report. We have a series of reports that this committee has asked that be presented in front of us in, I think David is going to do each week, I believe, every day. There's going to be one that we're going to be adhering to. So if it get Dr. Kylie Ann Stevens, Chief Executive Medical Director of DCT. Looks like Riona's here. And then Commissioner Clark, Attorney Magnuson, and then Executive Director Sue Abderholden. After these guys are done, then you guys can come on up and do your stuff. So thank you, Dr. Kylie Ann Stevens, for being here. Please, for the record, introduce yourself and give us what you got.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Dr. Kylie Ann Stevens. I'm the Executive Medical Director at the Department of Human Services, Direct Care and Treatment. Thank you for taking the time to hear about the Priority Admissions Review Panel report today. I'd like to begin by discussing just a brief background on the issue. Chapter 263B allows for a person to be civilly committed to the care of the DHS Commissioner. By 2010, the average wait time for admissions to Anoka Metro Regional Treatment Center was 19 days. By 2013, that number had creeped up to 30 days. And at that point in time, the priority admissions law was created. It prioritized individuals being held in jail for admissions to DHS facilities within 48 hours. This resulted in faster hospitalizations from jails for the first few years. This graph shows the trend for all priority admissions to DCT programs from the law's inception in 2013, through 2024. As you can see, the first year, DCT admitted 46 individuals under the statute. Last year, we admitted 424. So it really shows the demand on the services for direct care and treatment beds under this statute. In addition, I would like to note that civil commitments during this time period increased by over 36%, really signifying the needs for DCT programming and intensive mental health care for individuals across this time period. It did make it very difficult to admit people from jails within 48 hours and greatly reduce access for any others seeking admission who weren't currently residing in jails. This law has led to a concentration of really highly symptomatic patients in DCT facilities, which creates safety concerns. Civilly committed patients waiting in community hospitals have virtually no hope of being admitted to a DCT program. And several lawsuits have been brought against the state for failure to admit people within 48 hours. In 2023, the priority admission statute was amended to clarify that patients must be admitted from jails within 48 hours of a medically appropriate bed becoming available. It also gave counties a 2-year stay from fees for does not meet criteria, which we refer to as DNMC, patients in certain circumstances, and it created the Priority Admissions Task Force. The task force was charged with evaluating the impact of priority admissions law and to make recommendations to the legislature on the issue. Key stakeholders made up the membership of the task force, which was co-chaired by DHS Commissioner Jody Harpstead and Attorney General Keith Ellison. You'll see members here on the left side in this slide, so you can see a broad variety of stakeholders participated. And ultimately, the task force came to 9 unanimous recommendations for the legislature to consider. Briefly, these were to immediately begin to increase capacity at DCT, form a joint incident collaboration to actively facilitate discharges from DCT and community hospitals, approve an exception to the priority admissions law for up to 10 patients in community hospitals, create and implement new priority admissions criteria to DCT facilities, increase access to services provided in the community, provide funding to administer medications to people in custody, relieve counties of some cost for individuals awaiting transfer to other DCT programs, expedite Minnesota Section 1115 waiver application, and increase forensic examiner accessibility. Last session, the legislation took several actions to address the recommendations made by the task force, which is much appreciated, and I would like to highlight just a few of those. First, legislature designated funding to design a new 50-bed facility on the Anoka campus to expand DCT capacity. A new priority admissions framework was approved for admissions, which takes into consideration factors other than wait time for admission alone. MA payments for community-based services were approved, and cost of care changes were approved, and debt forgiveness for 2 counties. Additionally, a new task force for MI&D commitments was created, and an exception for 10 hospitalized patients was granted. Funding for medications in jails was provided through a pilot, and a pilot for direct care and treatment to survey and provide support for jails was directed. And finally, the legislature established the Priority Admissions Review Panel, which is the reason that we're here today. The Priority Admissions Review Panel was convened by Commissioner Harpsted and A.G. Ellison, and was made up of members from the task force, as well as 1 new additional member appointed by labor organizations. And the panel had 3 tasks. First, evaluate the 48-hour timeline for priority admissions and submit a report by February 1st of this year. Advise the DHS Commissioner on the effectiveness of the new priority admissions framework and admissions in general, and review de-identified quarterly for 1 year to assess the impact of the new framework that was implemented and to make sure it was applied equitably. And as a refresher, here are the panel members, which was made up of the task force, in addition to 1 new member, Lynn Butcher, who is a union representative, joined us for the review panel. The review panel reviewed data, among many other things, on the national landscape of the issue. As part of this, the DHS consultant conducted an analysis of publicly available data for all 50 states and Washington, D.C. To my knowledge, there's been no other such analysis conducted. It showed that people waiting in jails for state hospital beds is a widespread issue. Only 12 states, however, have timelines for admission, and deadlines for those 12 states ranged from 7 days to 60 days. Minnesota has the most stringent deadline of 48 hours. I'd like to stress that again. Minnesota is the only state with the 48-hour requirement for admission. And at least 24 states have experienced litigation over wait times for admission. 12 states of those 10 states of the 12 that do have deadlines continue to have a significant delay in admissions, suggesting that those deadlines do not solve the issue of wait times. Oregon and Washington, the remaining 2 states, have invested billions of dollars to reduce wait times, including millions in contempt fines. So the national landscape does not look much better than we do in Minnesota, if at all. It's a national issue. The review panel, I'm happy to report, came to 6 unanimous recommendations yet again, which I'd like to present for you briefly. The first was to expand access to care, specifically by funding the addition of a 50-bed facility on the campus of AMRTC, increase Medicaid rates for community and hospital providers, increase funding for first episode psychosis and bipolar disorder programs, increase funding for mobile crisis teams, and establishing a task force on transport holds and provide education to law enforcement about those holds. Secondly, the review panel recommends to extend the sunset provision for 2 years, during which time the legislature must develop DCT and community capacity, specifically to continue the current medically appropriate bed language in statute. The statute provides time to invest in expanded capacity and to measure progress, while not setting unrealistic expectations about how quickly these things can come together. And the review panel wants to continue to meet during this period of time over the next 2 years. Next, the panel recommends increased data sharing and transparency by having DCT create a publicly accessible dashboard with referral data and by making admissions policies easier to access. Next, we recommend providing basic mental health care in jails. This would require funding to encourage collaboration in the community to provide an outpatient level of care to health care and to individuals in jails. And the panel recommends continuing DCT's jail consultation pilot program and funding for long-acting injectable antipsychotic medications to help support people while they're in jails. We recommend continuing the does not meet criteria payment relief to counties for clients under certain circumstances, including situations where the counties have no ability to influence the timeline surrounding discharge, And it also allows for DCT to review situations on a case-by-case basis to determine if a downward adjustment would be appropriate. And then finally, the panel would like to renew the exception for up to 10 hospitalized patients waiting a bed in DCT to be prioritized. This has been successful over the last year in helping to relieve a little bit of the pressure faced by our community hospitals and accessing that higher level of care that DCT provides. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Appreciate the presentation and all the work that went into this report, both from the agency and also from all the stakeholders. And I think this is, trying to address a really important problem. I had a constituent who was, waiting for, I think, more than 100 days in a county jail, to get into one of these facilities. And I know that story is not alone, that many counties have experienced similar stories. And I was wondering, Mr. Chair, Dr. Stevens, of these 6 recommendations, which ones are included in the governor's most recent budget proposal when it comes to direct care and treatment?
Dr. Stevens, great question.
Mr. Chair, Senator, I'd like to defer to Carrie for that answer.
Ms. Briones, welcome to the committee.
Chair and members, for the record, my name is Carrie Briones. I'm the Legislative Director for Direct Care and Treatment. Chair and Senator Rasmussen, to your question, there are not items that are in the governor's budget that are directly related to this report. And part of it was that we didn't want to foreshadow what the review panel was going to recommend and wanted to make sure that we're better able to align with those recommendations. I will say on one policy piece related to the medically appropriate bed, we have a proposal that will align with the recommendations.
Senator Rasmussen. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the reason I highlight this is I think this is really important work. Especially recommendation 1 is going to require a lot of money to implement and to start making progress on it. It's my understanding, and with the governor's budget proposal, there really isn't any capacity expansion that's being proposed for direct care and treatment. And I just, we'll get a chance to hear from some of the testifiers and I think people who are involved in this process, but I'd be curious to hear their feedback on what are the gaps between what this report is recommending and what we see in the governor's proposal. Because at least from my reading, I think there is a mismatch where we're hearing from the people who are engaged in this process that we need more capacity, that we're seeing an increase in the demand for these types of services, but at the same time, we're also seeing a budget proposal that talks about no increase in demand. And so I just wanted to highlight that for some of the testifiers that are to come, and we can have the conversation later as well. So thank you.
Senator Rasmussen's going to Senator McQuay, but I think last year we had presented and gave the authority for them to start the planning on that 50-bed facility, and then also looking at what other options there are to help alleviate that. So it'll be good. I can't wait for Ms. Clark and Mr. Magnuson to kind of have that conversation. And I told them they only get 2 minutes each, but I think you two will probably have a couple of questions that will go beyond that. Senator McQuay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess maybe this is a question for you. I'm really struck by this national perspective. There's 12 states that have deadline admission. I guess what I'm wondering is what was it for? What purpose was it to solve? Because it's like having a deadline assumes that you need to push people to do a thing, right? Like you have to do this within 48 hours as if like they're not going to. And so I guess I'm just wondering like the origin of this, where did that come from?
2013. Senator, thank you. That's a great question. And I'll try to remember my history here. Then at the time, looked at the fact that there was no relief from the folks that were, in waiting for a bed space to open, basically. So, and then Senator Ayler was then in the House at the time, and the House and the Senate got together and said, "How do you, Jim?" We're talking about 12 years ago, the conversation on the bed space or lack of bed availability, right? People then with disabilities, what the issue is, were being housed in our jails. And it was like, well, what do we need to do with this? And there was the discussion from the House and the Senate was 48 hours. And that's, to Senator McQuay's point, Jim, you remember that conversation? Yeah. So that's where it started from, was then.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think you know, it feels super weird to be like, we need you to put together a panel and tell us why we're like discharging people within 48 hours. It's because we don't have space.
Yeah.
And if that was the answer in 2013 and it's still the answer today, I'm just wondering, like, what is the usefulness to put this? It'd be like if I was telling my toddler, like, do algebra. Why aren't you doing algebra? Do it tomorrow. She'd be like, okay, like she can't, right? And so I guess I'm just wondering if we're requiring a lot of really, really smart, busy people's time to come and keep telling us, like, we don't have capacity, and that's why it's not happening, whether you have the deadline or not.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm just feeling a little bit like I'm telling a toddler to do algebra.
Well, I think you're going down an interesting lane there. You're saying, we don't have the capacity, should we start finding appropriate placements, which then would argue then, do you start to do these isolated type of placements for people that fit in that? You're going to get some pushback on that one. So that's why the conversation was so many. If you look at the list of people that were on the task force, they came from all sorts of lived experience there. And and I'll never forget, we had been out in Anoka when the original 48-hour bill was passed. Then we went out to Anoka, and the staff there had just the different individuals that had been placed there. They had not in 1 year received one referral from a hospital. All these referrals were coming from the correctional side of it, right? And you had people then that were coming with some, maladaptive behaviors and things that were not just, hey, I'm mad at you, but rather, we're breaking glass, we're breaking stuff. And so it was this new level of aggression toward people. That led to this deeper conversation, which then led to the counties being, concerned, and also advocates being concerned. But then again, we still had people with disabilities that were lingering in our jails. One of the things that got me was in touring Anoka County Jail, which is there needs to be a new jail there. One individual spent 23 hours of their life living in a single cell room waiting for the appropriate placement, not getting the therapy that's needed. This wasn't therapy at all, being in this jail environment. So we do have a capacity problem. Hence, to your next thing, what do you want to do about it? What should we be doing about it? What can we do about it?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think, of these, obviously recommendation one is expand access to care, but I do think that this piece about provide basic mental health care in jails, I mean, we do have institutions in this state, and it's our prisons and jails, right? That is what we essentially do with people who have mental illness where we don't have beds for treatment. And I think if we started looking at, the large population of people who are essentially in jail or in prison because they have a mental health issue, those are beds.
Yep.
Why don't we turn the facilities into the appropriate type facilities? So I don't know, I'm looking at recommendation 4 and thinking that might be a good place to start.
It's interesting you bring that up. Jim Stewart, who was then the Anoka County Sheriff, had talked about the way corrections have changed over his lifetime and career. And he envisioned, the car coming in, and to the right, if he's just envisioning, it would be people dressed as, corrections officers. It's the jail time. And to the left, the car went to the left, and it would be people that are, the therapeutic, the mental health ones. And clearly, there's a difference between that piece of it. So the same discussion in 2013 we're still having today, and I appreciate that. And it'll be great to get that perspective from Terrell Clark, who she had been a previous senator here prior to that, if I remember right, Senator. So the other thing, the review panel wants to continue on, and Senator McQuaid kind of alluded to, well, if we're having these meetings, what are we, tell me why the review panel wants to continually meeting. Is that fair to question asked?
Well, Mr. Chair, I assume it's to keep telling us that we need to do our part of the job, but.
Doctor.
Mr. Chair? Senator, that's a good question. Quite a lot of discussion was had. We've grown quite fond of each other over the last 2 years. We work very well together, and everyone's very invested in this issue. I would like to point out that increasing access is one of the recommendations. It was one of the recommendations last time we met as well. There's a whole continuum of recommendations that you referenced. So I think the panel would like to continue to meet to monitor progress, and also to keep pressure placed on the legislature to make changes because they're needed.
So let me ask you this question, team. If I decrease the amount of money available for capacity building and I decrease let's say I'm going to slow growth down a little bit, right? Do you think that's not going for access, or that is going for access? I'm getting to the point. 2 years ago, we talked about 1.825 billion. Now I'm always talking about 25%, 65%, 1.5 billion. So if I'm going to slow the growth of a certain population, that just takes that access point and elevates it higher. Agree?
Mr. Chair, sans any additional context, one could argue if you do other things in other places, you could slow growth, right? Capping something doesn't necessarily slow growth. You could do other things, but just capping it doesn't change the need, no.
I think we're on it. Thank you. This is well worthy. I can't wait to hear from our committee members. Anything in final thoughts, Dr. Stevens? Increasing access, reimbursement, it's, money, we got to do it. It's investing. The most vulnerable people in the state of Minnesota are handled underneath your care, and I appreciate you being here, and I appreciate the work that you and Carrie do. Senator Abler.
Thanks. I'm just kind of getting back up to speed here. We had to solve Highway 610 again. The other committee, since 1964, Highway 610 has been under work. So Coon Rapids is a project we're working on it for 13 years. You stay up with that. So we're going to, anyway, so I'm getting my head around this again. In your, looking at your report, did you spend any time looking at the pipeline on people going in to, some of these places that they're going the wrong direction to start with, and decreasing supply somehow with a more, does that all take just more capacity? So you can just comment about that. Is there, whatever, so go ahead.
Dr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Abler. We've spoken about that quite a lot over the last 2 years through the task force and now the review panel. And you highlight a really important and I would say critical factor, which is that prevention, early intervention, and community supports have to be part of the conversation. If they're not, then we will continue to see more people in jails and requiring DCT services. If we invest in those earlier interventions, you will see reduced demand. Absolutely.
Senator Abler.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to, there was a, thank you for that answer. It was a perfect answer. But, so it's all about the criminal system, which we're not really much part of. We just deal with people maybe on the front end and the back end of that. But, I know there's some diversion programs and, is there some people that a sentence isn't even sensible to give them? They don't even belong going into the jail in the first place. And, I don't know, it's just, I don't even know how to craft a question about that. But, we're incarcerated, it's pretty controversial how we do our jurisprudence system. In the last year, it was a decision of the administration and the Senate and the House that we should reduce lengths of sentence times for good behavior, and we are decriminalizing some things that we don't even send people to jail for anymore. And I don't know, I don't know the answer. I'm no jurisprudence expert. I'm not a sheriff or anything, but I don't know, can you just comment about that? And then I don't even know how to craft it into a question, but you get my balloonish point there. Thank you.
Dr. Stevens, to the future sheriff of Anoka County, can you answer? Dr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Abler. I know exactly what you're getting at, and I might refer you to the Community Competency Restoration Task Force, which met a handful of years ago now, which really delves into this issue. Maybe the best known model for how to prevent these issues from happening. I don't want to say issues, that doesn't capture it, but prevent people from entering and continuing in the criminal justice system is called the sequential intercept model, which really focuses on all the way from early education efforts to early intervention, community supports, and effective care for individuals with mental illness and disabilities. That's a good place to start. So yes, there's a lot of literature on how to help slow the flow of individuals impacted by criminal justice.
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. question for Dr. Stevens. Dr. Stevens, in the report, you talked about how basically demand for these services and beds has increased. I forget if it was, I think, more than 36%. From 2013 to 2023. And I was wondering, Dr. Stevens, as someone who's working as the chief medical director, why is that happening? Why are we seeing an increase in Minnesota?
Dr. Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Rasmussen. I wish I had a simple answer for you. What I can share is this is something that's happening across the country. I'm connected with other medical directors and other health systems, other state hospital systems across the country, and it's an issue that's really grown over the last decade in particular. So again, we're not the only ones experiencing this issue. So I think it's a variety of things that is funneling people into the criminal justice system as opposed to care earlier on. That's one of the key factors, I would say. And it's important to address that. So thank you for asking the question.
Senator Rasmussen, as a follow-up to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Stevens. I know it's complicated and multifaceted, and I just think that's an important thing for us to continue to take a look at, right, when we are seeing these challenging outcomes that then the state is, trying to have solutions for, to just understand as best as possible what are some of those root causes and drivers. And I think, too, understanding the connection between this work and the criminal justice system, I think, is important, too, and understanding is this being driven by more Rule 20s than we've seen previously, and is that kind of the source, and are there people that are basically coming into direct care and treatment who maybe 10 years ago would have gone to prison? And just understanding, why are we seeing this influx?
Yeah.
I think is a really important thing for us to understand as this work continues.
Especially when we're making decisions on the policy on what this means in the state of Minnesota. That's really, to that point, that's going to be important. I think it'll be good for us to hear from the Kevin Magnusons of the world on that one. So Senator Gruenhagen and then Senator Abler. Sorry, Jim, Glenn was.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thanks for the presentation. If I understood the presentation properly, you'd like a deferral on the 48-hour wait period because it's spawning lawsuits in other states when you have that type of a requirement?
Dr. Stevens.
For 2 years, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, not precisely. Currently in statute, there exists a provision where admissions must happen within 48 hours of a medically appropriate bed becoming available.
Medically, that's the yes. Yes.
So that is the provision that we would like to continue for. The panel decided for an additional 2 years while further assessment can be done. What that language allows is for people to be admitted safely, not only for the individuals being admitted, but also for the staff caring for them, as well as to help secure our regulatory compliance so that we can continue to provide good care, as well as get funding from the federal government, for example. Hopefully that helps to clarify.
That's the key point. Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Senator Gruenhagen as a follow-up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, thanks for that response. I don't know, I'd probably be in favor of that, you know what I mean, to give them a little bit of a chance. The other thing, have you looked at any facilities that are not being used that might be appropriate or could be updated? You know, we got 2 hospitals that recently closed in Minnesota, maybe more, but I think Bethesda is one of them right across the street from the Capitol. Got a beautiful parking lot, which goes unused mostly as far as I can see. But, I mean, is there any initiative to look at facilities such as that might be appropriate to be utilized that are just sitting empty?
Yeah, I think, Dr. Stevens, we did that down in the St. Peter area. We gave money to help offset doing that specific thing. But is there anything else out there in your portfolio to answer Senator Gruenhagen's question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, we haven't, to my knowledge, looked at, all buildings that might be available. What I will say is because of the intensity of the services that we provide, most buildings cannot be upfitted with any sort of reasonable price. We did most closely look at and have for the last several years now looked at what's called the Miller Building redesign, which is on the Anoka campus. And so that might be familiar to some of you. We've learned that that building, in order to upfit it, would cost more than to demolish it and build anew. So that's where this recommendation for 50 beds on the Anoka campus comes from. But we'd be happy to look at other facilities. But because of the highly specialized nature of the care we provide, and lots of regulation around ligature, for example, it would be difficult to do for any sort of reasonable price.
Senator Gruhan, you to follow up on that, or?
Well, just, we regulate ourselves right out of using buildings, but that's another story. But I mean, you'd think a former hospital would be something that you could utilize, but just my thought.
Senator Abler, who has rehabbed 3 buildings on the Anoka campus.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Chair, the Miller Building is directly across from my home, just across the Rum River, and they're a good neighbor. So I think they just fixed it up for several $1 million or some millions. Anyway,
Yeah, we did.
So, Doctor, how many beds do we need in Minnesota today?
Dr. Stevens, that's a great question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Abler. It's a very complicated question, as you might imagine. How many beds does DCT need? Is that more refined to your question?
Senator Abler, you want to clarify
Well, to
that?
handle this 48-hour rule thing, if you could just, 50 seems like a pretty low number, but so according to my sheriff, who's not the sheriff anymore, Mr. Stewart is now moved on to another job, but so he said that more than half of his guests were not properly cited there, that they had mental health issues as compared to the criminal side. He wished he could do something else than leave them sitting in a jail cell. So statewide, do you have an idea how many people would be in this category to be in the 40-hour rule list lineup?
Dr. Stevens?
Yes, thank you. If you refer to the report, there is a section under the recommendations that does examine this issue. It's a rough estimate based on DCT's current wait list for people who qualify under the priority admission statute. So currently under this rule, we calculated that, you're right, 50 beds is low, that in order to completely eliminate the wait list
350.
and continue to admit people within 48 hours on an ongoing basis, rough estimate would be 350 beds.
Yeah.
The 50 beds was cited by the review panel as being a good starting point, in addition to the other investments that they believe are necessary in order to help reduce the dependency on DCT beds, which of course is quite an expensive endeavor.
Thanks. And Mr. Chair, this
Senator
next question is
Abler.
a segue to the next group of testifiers. So who pays for these people? The people sitting in Anoka County Jail are being paid for by the county?
Dr. Stevens?
And so there may be some kind of a budget around somewhere if people are being already housed somewhere. Someone's paying for them to be wherever they are, the state is or the county, if they all need to get out of there. So could you comment about that? I don't know the funding, how they get paid for.
Dr. Stevens?
Mr. Chair, Senator, I'm going to defer to my colleague.
Carrie? Get Dan down here. You know what? We need to
Well,
have an
Mr. Chair, the
operation.
county's can answer that question when they come.
Maybe, Dan, you're going to stick around too, aren't you? Because I think maybe if Kevin wants, we might as well start segueing into that.
Mr. Chair, he gets an appearance fee.
Dan gets an experience.
And when he gets an appearance fee, when he comes down to the table,
Yes.
I believe it's in the contract.
Is it in the contract? For the record.
For the record, I'm Dan Starkamp, Director of Operations Services for Direct Care and Treatment. And Mr. Chair, Senator Abler, yes, it's in my contract. I got to come down here when you guys ask me. So I will be here upon demand. I think your testifiers coming up next from the counties can talk much more about the budget side from their side.
Yeah.
As people come into our facilities, of course, we're looking at the funding, what it takes for us to manage. But again, we've got individuals in our facilities that could also be moved to other locations if there were other options that were out there. So it's also a flow out as much as a flow in issue that we're kind of looking at in the process here.
Yeah, it's page 23 really kind of gets that, Senator Abler.
Yeah.
That's, so we toured the facilities. It's just like still, go ahead, Tim. I'm sorry.
I just have to tell you, I didn't throw it yet, Mr. Chair, but this is a copy of the report, and I feel like in some of the meetings, they're like, oh, another report, you know? But I'm not throwing it. I'm just, if I would be to
You could
throw.
do that.
It's a very nice report, but How many reports we hear from, God bless your report. I think it's well done, and I'm glad your team is figuring it out, and maybe you should hang around longer and really get through all this. But it may be that there's a budget that we're not thinking of, that even the counties aren't thinking of. They're already paying. These people that are wrongly housed in the Anoka County Jail and every other county jail are being paid for by somebody. And so I think vacant jail cells don't cost anything. And actually, Anoka wants to build more. If
They do.
County and all that thing. And so it just, as we think about this, and, you know, if the members of that task force didn't look at that piece, maybe you need 50 more for the state ones. And maybe that's it. And maybe the county has got a share in this. They're not wealthy, but they're already paying the money. Quit shaking your head at me and my good friend. But I'm not trying to put another burden on you, but I'm just saying the burden's already there. That's all. So anyway, I think that's helpful, and I'm ready to hear from the county testifiers.
I think you're going to have lots of great conversations on that. That's the Medicaid. If you're looking at mental health services in that county-based structure, and they're there, that's not a third-party billing aspect, is it? It's all someone's paying for that. But the 1115 waiver is going to help us offset some of that. But there's still a lot of buts there. But maybe it's time to have the conversation what David Senjum talked about a few years ago, right? Regional facilities, not in the sense, but it's got to be a pathway, a streamway. I mean, I remember him having this conversation, and there was a lot of pushback on it. But 350 beds, and here's what happens if we don't have the appropriate placement for people, right? Which, you know, we're not going to cut services. We're just going to cap it. We're going to cap the growth, right? I'm sorry. I'm using my sense of humor out of anger. That was funny. But what happens when we don't have the appropriate placement for people, they end up being part of the Wilder Foundation's homeless study that we get to read every 3 years. And it's really sad. It just absolutely breaks my heart. Beyond. And so thank you for all your work that you did on this committee and the members. I'll tell you what, looking at the names of the people that were part of that, I bet you had a few opinions in that room, didn't you, Dr. Stevens?
Mr. Chair, we certainly did. And thank you for bringing out the importance of the individuals that require that need our help and need to be served. So thank you for keeping them at the center of the conversation.
That's the focus. We can never lose that, no matter what's happening out there, no matter how we are. That's the focus of why we do it. I mean, that's a question this committee started asking 2 years ago. Why do we do what we do, right? So final thoughts, Dan, Carey, or Dr. Stevens? Dan?
Mr. Chair and members, I know our CEO, Marshall Smith, would be appropriate for me to mention that he talks about a ruler of 1 to 12. DCT is number 12. We have other options in the community from 8 to 11.
Yeah.
We don't have a system. So when you say that we should really be talking about how do we address this, it can't be just 12 and it can't just be 5 to 11. We have to figure out how together we can make this system work and moving people in and out as appropriate in the system in that process. So it's a more global view than just DCT or just the counties in the process.
Thanks for that reminder, Dan. He's talking about a continuum of service there. You mean comprehensive, coordinated, and collaborative kind of thing? Thank you. I appreciate that. Members, any other thoughts? Thank you so much. Let's get, Dan, you're going to stick around because I'm sure, or you guys are going to stick around, right?
We will.
So, thank you. Thank you for doing this. Do we have enough? We have 4 people or 3, David? What do we got? 3? We're good. Can you all share a table? Here's the order I got. Senator Clark. That has higher precedent than Commissioner, by the way. So I get to call you as you are, Senator. Terrell Clark, Stearns County Commissioner, Association of Minnesota Counties, and then we'll go to Kevin and then Sue. You guys are all 3 members. There's no bill in front of us. I just want to make it very clear to you. Also, don't start lobbying us on something, right? Because there's no bill in front of us. But, you know, your experiences as members of that committee and getting to what May Quaid started asking about, you know, the history. We go back, there's a few of us that there, even prior to that, you were part of this conversation too, Senator Clark. So for the record, tell us who you are and why you're here, and clock starts ticking for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. As you said, I am Terrell Clark. I'm currently serving as the Sturgis County Commissioner. And when I served here, our sons called me Major Senator Mommy because of the Civil Air Patrol designation you get. So, yeah, so if you aren't already part of the Civil Air Patrol, you might want to see your kids can decide to call you that. They don't anymore, though. I'm here today. I want to thank you for having us and for the opportunity to serve and for the work the members have done on this. Honestly, if we, as a group, had the resources to be helping solve this problem, we would. But what you're getting is our ideas, right? So today, you're hearing me represent the Association of Minnesota Counties, the Minnesota Association of County Social Services Association, and the Minnesota Intercounty Association. Where you left off about this being about the individuals, about their health, their opportunity to live the best life really they can, and for our communities to be safe, that is really the crux of it. And how this gets paid for, it's by taxpayers. So part of the question is, how do you most fairly do that? And anything we could do to increase reimbursement off of Medicaid, we are all for that. You might not find it in this because this report was really, in a lot of ways, about that 11th inch, the 11 to 12 inch, not about all the other things we all know. And I would just want to reinforce how important counties do believe, and our county coalition believes that the community components are important. So there's a few things I'm hoping that you'll take away from this report. If you have any questions, and you were asking some very fun questions, happy to try to attempt to address those, but can do so through our ongoing conversations. So one of our top takeaways is the need for 350 beds, increasing the capacity. And I'll get back to that in a moment. I do want to first have you take some time with that dashboard and the data on it. It's on page 36. It includes that continued upward trend in the demand for priority admissions from jail to DCT. And I probably should have reinforced, we don't believe that jail's ever the appropriate place for somebody who should be elsewhere.
Say that again.
Page 36 is the dashboard. So it's showing jails are not the appropriate place for somebody who has high acuity needs. They're a place for when people has committed a crime. So we don't want people languishing in jail, so they need to be in the appropriate place. And yes, absolutely, people have needs who are in jails, and that's why basic mental health is a part of that, but it's not the kind of high acuity needs that are needed elsewhere. That data also shows that persistent, significant wait lists for priority admissions to DCT, and really shows that reality of the wait times. So just want to underline the significant average wait times to access appropriate beds, particularly regarding forensics. It's an average of 289 days, and in it can swing. The last quarter, it was over 500 days. So just to go ahead and get the kinds of beds that are needed, that's a long time, and it's because of capacity. Absolutely, yes, more needs to be done on that front end. Our county, happy to talk about the things Stearns is doing. We are doing lots of things, and we are partnering with many people. But these folks are needing specific kinds of assistance and beds at DCT. So the priority admission statute originated as a response to that lack of access and inpatient capacity at DCT. For a period it worked, and it hasn't for quite a while. So second, going back to the statement I made at the beginning, is the need for the increased capacity at DCT and in the community. On page 23, we'd probably argue that's one of the more important pages. This report highlights the estimate of the potential cost to address the nearly 350 people in priority admissions wait list through the added DCT capacity. It's a big price tag. It's roughly $800 million, 450 of which is for construction. I'm going to give you, it's not apples to apples, if it's okay, Mr. Chair, but in Stearns County, we're
Hey, your 2 minutes was long over, Terrell.
Yeah,
so
you gave us enough questions. Mr. Chair, if you permit me.
No, I think this committee's okay with you guys talking, so go
Okay,
ahead.
I just want to make sure. I didn't want to sound flippant there, because I don't feel flippant.
Even though you didn't give Anoka Hennepin that opportunity
significant-
20 years ago. I just, not that I'd remember that.
I know. I can't even remember which thing, because I always took you very seriously.
I'm kidding. Keep going,
I know.
please, Senator. Yes.
As you pointed out, we are friends. So So when we talk about $450 million for construction of a new building, I got to tell you, on the one hand, that's sticker shock. On the other hand, in Stearns County, because of what DOC requires us to do, we're in the process, we're going to be building a new justice center. Our new justice center, which will be a new jail with more beds than we have now, new courthouse, and law enforcement, is going to cost our taxpayers, or because you let us ask them about sales tax, those in surrounding communities, it's going to cost about $300 million for new construction. For one county, for just our one county for that jail. Statewide, if I'm sitting in your chairs, that's a concrete number. That's a number that, okay, that's what a facility costs. That's not what the cost, though, for all the important things we need to do in community. Excuse me. So if you think about it, that's a specific ask, and it's something that is doable. So in addition to what you heard about those 50 beds, a good step forward in a hard budget year would be at least planning money to start figuring out how to do that piece, and also the kinds of community work we know needs to be done. This estimate, we want to thank DCT. This is the first time we've seen an estimate about what it would take. You've been asking for a few years. What would it take? And again, this is that 11th inch, not the 5th to 11th, not the 1st to 4th. So we recognize it's not the sole solution, but we know it's a key part of the solution to have that state investment that really just hasn't been there in a long time. It's got to be paired with additional investments in the community capacity for us to serve those people in much better ways. Mr. Chair and Senator Abler, you were talking about some of those other creative things. The governor's proposed budget with the waivers would actually affect a number of people that we can be helping in community. We know right now in my community, we have some people who, but for being able to use those waivered services, they would be languishing in jail to be waiting to get into into DCT. Instead, they're able to be in community. So this overdue state investment for the state-operated beds, crisis stabilization facilities, and specialized services critical to addressing high acuity needs. To emphasize this, we want to reinforce the task force only supports extending the sunset provision around the 48-hour rule, conditioned on the legislature providing funding to increase capacity at DCT and in community. The need is urgent, our system is over capacity, and we're not serving individuals in jails, hospitals, and community the right way now. So a county and task force guiding principle is all people living with mental health disorders are entitled to have care when they and where they need it. People who have been civilly committed should have access to the court-ordered treatment they require to achieve recovery. We know that the jails are not a replacement for mental health hospitals or secure treatment facilities. The review panel's recommendations only include that down payment to ensure that we get moving. Lastly, and I'll make this very quick, is I want to point out one of the other provisions, which is number 5. It's continuing the does not meet criteria payment relief to counties for clients in certain situations. Counties have continued to have concerns that the DNMC county cost share, particularly when individuals are awaiting transfer between state-operated facilities, is just not appropriate. It's not appropriated either. For 2024, the total DNMC costs paid by counties was $24 million. The legislature granted counties a 2-year reprieve on some of those costs, saving counties about $10.2 million, including about $500,000 in Stearns, about $372,000 in Otter Tail, and about $1.96 in Hennepin. Those are real taxpayer relief. The 2-year reprieve was only for those deemed mentally ill and dangerous and awaiting transfer to another state-operated facility. This reprieve is set to expire in July. These charges can bankrupt a county's behavioral health budget and are outside of the county's control. I'm going to end there. I want to thank you, and I'll certainly be happy to take any questions.
Good. I think, why don't you stick around, because I think we'll get to Kevin, and then you're embarking. This is what that review, to hear the information in front of us, and it's like, all right, so what's next, right? And so and that's what we'll get to. Kevin, all the way from Washington County, Kevin Magnuson.
Thank you, Mr.
For the
Chair.
record.
Members, my name is Kevin Magnuson. I'm the county attorney in Washington County. And I'm here on behalf of the Minnesota County Attorneys Association. I'm on the executive committee there. And this has been sort of my cause since John Choi talked me into taking this on way back when I became the president of our Urban County Attorneys Association. But we really are grateful for the opportunity to have had a seat at this table, talk about a really important topic. And it's, I think we're at a unique time in history. And I'll come to that in a second. I do have to go back to what Senator Hoffman said, and it really is his fault. I mean, who gave me the opportunity to be in this situation. He's right that there was a time when I was across the table from Commissioner Harpstead, and we hadn't met before, and it was pretty tense. It was pretty tense.
In the governor's reception room.
That's right. It was a very ornate setting for all that steam and fire. But the good thing that came of it was trying to figure out how to diffuse the situation. The good senator says, I know, we'll put him on the task force. And bam, that solves all the problems, right? And sure enough, all of a sudden I'm on the task force. And it's really the first time, and I think the commissioner would say this as well, that you've got the county attorneys and the sheriffs and things and DHS, DCT people going together to see a jail together, going to see HCMC and see the conditions. And it was a huge eye-opener. And it kind of dawned on us. And of course, this all happened with other people long before we were in charge, so it's easy. But say, hey, wait a minute, why haven't we been doing this for 20 years? This is crazy. This is the first time there's been this kind of exchange. And as a result of that, I think the task force has had probably one of the best good faith efforts to reach a solution that I've seen in my career. Most task force, you feel like that's the place things go to die or to get postponed or whatever. This is a place that this problem went to come up with a solution. And it's a big solution. But I would caution us to, just because we can't boil the whole ocean of fixing the whole mental health crisis, doesn't mean we can't focus on this particular, somewhat discrete, but still big problem. And that is that we have people who are in jails with mental health issues. They're court-ordered to be in a jail, not sentenced because they haven't been convicted of anything, but they might as well be. They are serving time just as any criminal would. And we have to think a little bit about what that means. That means that the government has taken away their liberty rights, their constitutional right for liberty, in order to give them help. And they're not giving them the help. Right? They're sitting in a jail when they should be in some kind of, court-ordered treatment. The court says you need to go into a secure state hospital facility, or if there are other opportunities, they do it, and they can't. And so it's been going on since 2013 when this thing first bubbled up at the legislature. And the first attempt to solve it was the 48-hour rule. And you would think at that time, people would sit around and say, we got a real problem here. We got a capacity problem. We should start solving it before it turns out that we got 350 people who don't have a place, but it didn't happen. And so even though it's a tight budget year, we're faced with the problem, of just incredible exponential magnitude, just growing every year. But we're also at a place, I think, where you have all of the stakeholders coming together and looking for a solution. And as this issue becomes more and more apparent to people, I haven't found anybody who doesn't want to get these people out of a jail cell and into a proper treatment facility.
Thanks, Kevin, for that.
I shouldn't have taken a walk. I was almost done. Kidding, Senator.
You're doing your water shot there. I thought you were going to tell a Brad Johnson story or something, but that's okay.
No, that's
Keep
fine,
going.
Senator. I can just respond to questions.
I think, no, but it was so important that what you were saying, and I can't wait for us to really get into the weeds on that. So Sue Abderholden, Executive Director of NAMI, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Members. For the record, Sue Abderholden, Executive Director of NAMI, Minnesota, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I served for 2 years on the Competency Restoration Task Force, this Priority Admissions Task Force, and the panel. So I've been actually focused on this issue for quite a few years. And I want to say that NAMI does support the recommendations in the report, and that we've actually drafted a bill to try to carry out many of them. But one of the recommendations I want to highlight is the need to actually increase access to mental health care in the community. That's where we really need to start. We need to make sure that people can access the care that they need when and where they need it. And simply focusing on DCT beds will not solve the problem of people with mental illnesses languishing in jail. We simply have to go upstream. We have to work to prevent people from mental illnesses from ever ending up in contact with the police and ending up in jail. One of the things that I've said over and over when I've heard sheriffs complain about people with mental illnesses in the jail, I have to ask who brought them there. We have to start there. And so this means we need to provide earlier intervention, especially for people with psychosis and bipolar disorder. We do have first episode programs in Minnesota, but not even half of the ones that we need. We have asked for several years for funding for an early bipolar disorder program, but it's never been funded. Last year, you passed the volunteer engagement program, which was an effort to really, go way upstream before anyone even gets into a full-blown crisis, but those dollars have not yet gone out the door. We also funded to have locked intensive residential treatment services, locked IRTS facilities where we can use Medicaid, 16-bed facilities. We think we have figured it out with CMS so that we can use Medicaid for them, and that, again, could be another alternative to this issue. Our crisis teams, our mobile mental health crisis teams that cover all 87 counties in Minnesota, are an effective alternative to a police response. They're able to resolve mental health crises in the community and avoid hospitalizations and jails. And yet they face an $8 million funding cliff this next biennium. We also need to figure out how to transport people when they are in crisis. We have seen the last several years way too many times where police will not transport a person in crisis unless they get into the vehicle voluntarily. And there needs to be something between deadly force and voluntary. And frankly, what we've seen is when they don't, they inevitably end up in jail days or weeks later. And once a person with mental illness ends up in jail, we need to ensure access to medications, especially injectables, and basic mental health care. We don't want to see people decompensate while they are waiting for a bed to open. DHS did submit the 1115 waiver application, but we'd like to urge them to include pre-adjudicated individuals as an eligible population. Lastly, we do support an additional 50 beds at AMRTC, but not more than that. And we strongly believe that we need to keep the language that the 48 hours goes into effect when a medically appropriate bed is available. I talked to NAMIs in other states, and we do not want to litigate this issue, and we don't want to end up with millions of dollars in fines like has happened in other states. I do want to just remind people that the competency restoration bill, did pass and is just being implemented. We're going to see the impact of these forensic navigators so that people aren't going back into jail over and over and over again. And so we don't really know the impact of that law yet. And finally, I just want to say there are no easy answers. You can't just say, well, if we do this many beds, this will solve the problem, right? It's a whole array of things that we need to do to address this issue. And I really hope, none of this is in the governor's budget, but I really hope that we can find some ways to fund at least several of these recommendations this year. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Identified a need as the key. None of it's in the governor's budget. So, one of the things, Sue, you brought up, the art. There's the alternative response team in the city of Brooklyn Park, which is the third or fourth largest city in the state of Minnesota. It's the most diverse community in the state of Minnesota, where 64% of the people don't look like me or you, right? I mean, it's got all this beautiful, wonderful charm in the Anoka, Hennepin, and Osseo school districts, where there's 65,000 students. So it's got this piece, and there was this increase in police-involved discussions that somebody has a 911 call. So they put together these alternative response teams. They call it our team, and it's absolutely made a profound difference, right? Made a profound difference. There's a however in this piece. Funding, they're reliant on us. And I don't know if you looked, is there any human services dollars available? I haven't seen any. So I'm trying to make light of the fact that it's not there. It's beautiful stuff, but that was established from years and years of the work that you've done.
So Senator, if I might, I want to clarify, so there's two different types of responses. So one, we have state mental health mobile crisis teams in every county. And then we have cities developing their own small response teams. And the one that we really support, we want to create, especially with 988 now and Travis's law, we want a statewide system. So we want to make sure that people know what to expect. And the mobile crisis teams,
You know, I
they
was
actually
just,
provide.
Sue, I'm going to just stop you right
Okay.
there. So we're going to go to questions. You don't need to tell me I was just sharing with you that it's really good that to see the impact that investing in a local initiative, and you're seeing the different folks that are on there. So that's just a different one. Senator Abler.
Didn't know I was first in line. Anyway, thanks to everybody.
Who else is on the list?
So at a good hearing, people start to think a little differently, you get a little enlightened, like, I hadn't thought of that before. So just for starters, Commissioner Clark, who pays for county jail beds? The county?
Mr.
Senator.
Chair and Senator Abler. Yes, and, I mean, we do use other services, like we have, in our case, we have social workers in there. We actually are doing a whole lot of other kinds of partnerships. We have a contract with Centricare for both physical and mental health. But
Yeah.
yes, that's where it comes from.
I'm just trying to sort this out. I mean, my point today is not to impugn the governor for having, I do have a copy of his budget for this, so right here, Mr. Chair. Anyway.
Terrell, did he do that when he was in the House? Did he hold the blank
It's
piece of
just a
paper
blank
up?
piece of
And when he,
paper.
okay,
So
he still does
That's not the
that.
point of today, but it's well, I'll just say I'm frustrated. Here we are, we put the task force together and like, oh, let's wait 2 more years. And now, and part of the recommendation, Senator Hoffman, is the legislature is supposed to get them the money to do whatever. So probably not happening this year, just to tell you. And so a lot of us appreciate the pressure that the rule did put on somebody to properly serve people to the best extent possible. So we need 350 beds. In the Wright County project, were any of those beds that are created that are more beds than before, any of those suitable for a 48-hour crisis management kind of wing? And that, has that been thought about?
Mr. Chair and Senator Abler, I'm sorry, which place?
Well, you just talked, so
Oh,
Anoka
so
County, Anoka wants to build a new jail, Wright
Right.
County's putting $300 million into it. Are there any, you build all these beds, Anoka County wanted to build 500 beds, like more than we even need. Never mentioning
for the
something that
jail.
could be used for these crisis individuals to have actually a crisis program down the hall with, you know, nicer rooms and maybe windows or something.
So-
Is there any talk about that?
Mr. Chair and Senator Abler, I will tell you, I hear conversations about regional ideas between commissioners all the time. There's a lot of questions about what that would look like and what else can be done to reduce people in jails. Again, using Stearns as an example, we have some pretty significant upstream and middle stream and crisis work that we do in partnership with others, including our Central Minnesota Mental Health Center. When you're talking, like, for example, Ottertail or Roseau have places that might be able to be converted. Those are the kinds of things, this is where Dr. Season says it's complicated. It is
Yeah,
complicated. A lot of what we're talking about is probably, at least from where counties have talked about, is in addition to what's needed for DCT. There is a lot that's needed within community, and then the question goes back to what is the fairest way to pay for those? Is it property taxes? Again, I brought up the governor's, it's fine if you want to go ahead and give grief to this governor, because I can remember a different governor that you and I both served under that I also gave grief about their budget proposal. They look kind of similar, right?
Yeah.
Governors do shifts. And it's like, don't do shifts, it's just going to put more money in a more regressive way to pay for things, and it would be very uneven. You know, thinking about some of your counties, I mean, there are not the resources, there's not the tax capacity, there's also often not the other kinds of human capacity to do it. So we have to be more creative and think about it with some of what is the state coming together and saying, yep, we're going to pay for this to the state, but we really are interested in local solutions. So part of what Sue talks about is some really good local solutions, some of which just has the money hasn't gone out the door. So it's a variety, but at least counties would contend that property taxes are not going to ever be your best way to pay for it, because we can't make sure that people are getting what they need. And even current law makes it very difficult. Let's say there was a combination of counties that came together with community partners and said, let's have a smaller place. This has been talked about in central Minnesota, but who would run it? Who's got the skills? And then frankly, they'd have to take whoever first come, first served was from a different part of the state. So nobody wants to build any place that is going to be covering other people instead of their own. I mean, that's part of the tax levy issue.
Yeah. I don't know, I feel like we're just going around in circles, and I think I'm going to push back on you and on DCT and whoever else I can push on today.
Might as well pick on me, Jim.
I've got no issue with you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
And Mr. Chair, Senator Abler, I might not have understood the question you were asking me.
Oh, no, this is a discussion. I'm just,
Okay.
I mean, so Sheriff Stewart said more than half his guests are in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And so Anoka County wants to build 500 freaking beds to replace 250 or so. Wright County is building
yes.
more beds. Why are we building more jail cells when we should
Yes.
be making half as many jail cells? And then some other that are more like concierge
It's a
suites where people
corrections
could
question.
get the care they need. We're already paying for their service, or you're already paying for minimal levels of, just like jail, or I'm sure that you pay more for the programming. But I just think we're missing something,
Yeah,
Mr.
and
Chair.
to that, no, you're right, Jim.
Like, are we just on the whole wrong?
Sue Abderholden said it right. She's the access mental health and community, that the upstream, the earlier intervention, what does that look like, right? I mean, that's the whole thing. And yet here we sit.
Right, and Mr. Chair, part of why both Anoka and Stearns are about to build bigger facilities is because
because of that.
DOC requires us to. They basically are telling, they're not, the state's not covering that. The state is not covering that. They're telling all of us when a building hits, they don't do this with prisons, right? They tell counties when a building hits a certain age, they expect a new building, a new jail. And then when courts aren't safe, you're expected to build new safe courts. And that's, so yes,
We can
some of
fix
this
that.
is very much
We
upside
write
down.
laws here.
It's a segue to Senator Rasmussen. 'Cause
I'll
this
let
is
him go.
No, this is like, right?
We're
I
buying
mean,
the wrong things.
Yeah, we are.
We're buying the wrong things. And there's no reason my county should want to be putting up 300 new beds.
EMQ's doing this, meaning you, that's at the
And I
right
said
thing.
freaking, by the way, so if anybody's.
No, it's like, you're it's Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just,
thank you.
know,
Thank you,
wanted
Mr.
to Commissioner Clark's point, the Department of Corrections doesn't even follow the same rules that they're pushing onto counties, right? And we had Commissioner Schnell in front of the Capital Investment Committee, and I asked him, do you follow your own rules that you put out to counties? And they said no. And they don't have any intention on following the rules that they're and the costs that they're pushing on to local counties that could be spent, I think, better on things like our mental health infrastructure. Mr. Chair, my question is for Mr. Magnuson, and it's about kind of Rule 20. And, one of the things I'm trying to understand is, number one, do we have the balance right on Rule 20? Because I was asking one of your colleagues, is one of the reasons that we see the increased demand for DCT is because in other states they would perhaps be going to prison. And would love to get your thoughts on, do we have the right balance on Rule 20, or is that something that's a part of this conversation? Or is this, basically by investing in direct care and treatment, are we saving on the correctional side by not seeing people in prisons later? But I just wanted to get your sense on, because that's something that is a policy choice. It's a choice that the judicial branch makes in terms of, as someone who has oftentimes committed a crime, should they be going to civil commitment, or should they be going to trial for criminal penalties?
Counselor. Mr. Chair, Senator Rasmussen, how much time do you have? That's a huge question. Parts of it have filtered into this conversation, but to answer your question, I don't know how you ever get the balance right with Rule 20. It's just difficult. But what we've seen is this massive explosion that replicates what's going on, with other mental health constituencies, filling the system. So we're seeing many more Rule 20 filings than we've seen, even 6 years ago. So it's just exploding, and I don't know if at least in Minnesota, whether that has something to do with, the particular balance that you're talking about. I think it has more to do just with what's going on in society. But I think the thing to keep in mind here is that, the population that DCT is designed to care for is an extremely narrow, unique. They're the people that there is no other place for. So these are the medically appropriate beds that they're looking for can't be provided by anybody else in those situations. Now, I don't think that there's, and I know some people have felt that well, this might be taking us down the road to a reinstitutionalization of psychiatric treatment. I don't think we're even close to that being a possibility at this point, just because of the sheer numbers of people who need high level acute care, that AMRTC really is nothing but a stabilization critical care unit. And when you're looking at what counties should be doing, it really should be on the out. So how do you get people out of AMRTC and into, community-based care and things that can follow up on that? But what we're talking about now is how do we address as quickly as possible the fact that we're holding people in jails that shouldn't be there. And this is something that the public defenders are now on board with. The MSBA, this has become a big issue. The criminal law section is really involved now, in addition to the other county stakeholders. So you got everybody on every side of the spectrum who is, saying that this is the time to fix this.
Thank you. To that point, Sue, and then Senator Rasmussen, if Sue wanted to add to that, to your question. Sue?
Thank you, Senator Hoffman. Mr. Chairman, Senator Rasmussen. When we had the Competency Restoration Task Force, of course, we looked at Rule 20, and one of the things we found is that, yes, there were a lot more people who were, deemed incompetent to stand trial, but not just in Minnesota, across the entire country. And so part of it, we tried to look in why. Part of it was dual diagnosis, so you've got folks who are having a substance use disorder and a mental illness, increase in meth, some things like that. Greater awareness on both the judges and the attorneys about mental illnesses and then their kind of impact to do that. So the other thing I just want to mention, and just in response, is that not all those people actually need the care that's provided at Anoka. It's just that there's no other level. And so, and we let people, it takes a while to do actually the assessment and then decide that someone should go to Anoka. If we're intervening earlier and we have a locked IRTS facility, they could go there. So we have to think about, does it all have to be at Anoka? I would say no.
Senator Rasmussen. No, it got the conversation going. We're going to add you, Glenn, after Makeway, then Utke, then you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I sit on the Education Policy Committee, and one of the questions that we had in that committee was, what's up with the youth mental health? And there are many things, tech companies, which I think everybody knows I loathe, but also there's a large body of research, and JAMA just put out a big studies about this, that wealth inequality is literally driving the mental health crisis in this country and in this state. And it's interesting that I'm coming to that point first, because what I wanted to say when I got on the list was that I want to really push back against the idea that the only thing that's happening this session, or the only possible thing that could happen this session, is that there are cuts to services for people. I really want us to pull out that tax expenditure report and find out which corporations are not paying which taxes in this state, so that we can talk about stopping doing that before we stop talking about, or before we talk about stopping services to people. And so I really appreciate this conversation, because it is so helpful and so informative. But that it is part of a solution to a bigger problem, is that wealth inequality is certainly driving this issue. And until we solve that problem, we're going to continue to just say, like, how many more beds do we need, and how many more crisis response teams, and so I really want us to start saying, like, we actually are going to say other people pay their fair share before we start cutting services. And so I did have questions, although I think you kind of answered it, Senator Rasmussen, if DOC is following their own rules. Sounds like no. Can we rewrite those rules? Are they rules that we put out? We can write rules for DOC. I think we should do that. Sue, I had a question for you. You were talking about the voluntary transport, and it brought to my mind, like, we have law enforcement arriving, and they're like, only if somebody gets in voluntarily will we transport them. And then is it the idea that if we're involuntarily transporting them, then there's like an arrest presumption there, like we're taking them into custody?
Yes. No? Sue Abderholden, can you clarify that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, so that's actually under the commitment statute.
Okay.
Right, so someone has deemed, usually it's a mental health professional or crisis team, the officers can't do they can issue a transport hold because they think they're going to meet the 72-hour criteria. So what we want to do is bring them to the hospital. And that's what we're having trouble doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just trying to think about, is there something that we as a legislature can do, or is this maybe a cultural and training piece, or how, this is a tiny part of what you said, but it really stuck out to me.
Ms. Abderholden.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, we actually have a bill that would create, a task force. So on trying to bring everyone together, because we've tried, we've met with people, and it came after the changes to the deadly use of force law is when we saw those changes take place. And so we'd like to bring folks together to say, how can we solve this? We do have something under non-emergency medical transportation called protected transport. We've only got 3 vehicles, like in the whole state of Minnesota, and that was to be an alternative to police transporting someone, but they're just not available.
Wow, Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate that technical piece because it was just sticking in my head, but I really want to, what Commissioner Clark and Attorney Magnuson have said here, like the ask here is that we do more. And I really do think that, we have a role in kind of getting to root cause, and we have the ability to pull out that tax expenditure report and not make these kinds of cuts. And I always look at the governor's budget as a really cute PowerPoint, but we make the policy. We appropriate the money. And so we don't have to, it doesn't really matter what it says in it about this because we get to say what it is about this. And so I think we can do a lot of things.
So 2 things I did last week when Udke said, return to sender, and then now yours is a cute PowerPoint. I'm going to steal those 2 quotes that you two just know that. So thank you for that. Speaking of Senator Udke, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier on, we heard about the mobile crisis response in addition to law enforcement responding. Does anybody have information as to why in 2024 with this program, it wasn't used a lot, or it wasn't fully used anyhow? There was a fair amount of money that was dropped back into the general fund. It seems to be something that gets talked about and it's important, but apparently it wasn't used.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Sue, do you have that? Yeah.
So there were 2 different programs. There was funding for crisis teams through one of the public safety bills, and then there was funding for the mobile crisis teams through the human services bill and healthcare bill. And my understanding is that money through human services did go out the door, but I'm happy to follow up on that.
Senator, okay, if that,
Mr. Chair, if you would like to, because my information shows that 2.7 million of this money here in Human Services was not used. 2.7 million could go a long ways. It was in 2 different buckets, but yet it was still there.
was that, Senator Udke, was that part of the underspending that we dealt with 2 years ago? Or is this just this last year?
This would just be last year, fiscal year 24. At least that's what I'm seeing. And so if somebody wants to follow up there, see what went on. I mean, we just hear about, I keep referring. I mean, as I'm listening to all this, the last thing, or the main thing is I do not and will not do anything that ties the hands of law enforcement. When they get called out, they need to do the job as they're trained to do. But if we do have these mobile crisis teams that are going to go out and possibly interact with some mental health issues that the law enforcement wouldn't have to me, that's what they're designed for. And, there's always going to be something left on the table, but this seems to be something that maybe could have been used more.
Senator Udke, I think I thought that underspending question that pops up, I'm wondering if maybe we could ask the department in our follow-up to Wednesday if it's something's available for us. But they know. I mean, remember that's why 2 years ago all we talked about was the underspending of $1.825 million. But if this is part of that piece, thank you for doing that. I'd like to see if there's more like that out there, and maybe Elise Bailey, does 2 days give her enough time to come up with that list? If not, she can. Nope, she's shaking her head. No, 2 days. A week? Nope. She'll get back to you.
A month isn't in play.
No, not month is not in play, but it'd be nice to get to your point on where those are at, and maybe Ms. Bailey can get those for us. A follow-up. Could you follow up maybe with Senator Rutke and I in the future? And you don't have to come. Oh, you want to come down? She's coming down.
Mr. Chair, well, she's coming down.
Yeah, you're
If I
fine.
might.
Stay there. You can just make room.
So a couple things is, Ms. Abderholden also referred to a few other things that, while you passed the funds, haven't gotten out the door quite yet. So the
Yeah.
pilot on the medical in the jail isn't, the injectables is not out the door. That's not, it's in process, but that isn't going yet. The locked IRTs we're waiting on. There's a few of those other things. And then in addition, there are counties separately that with the federal ARPA dollars, we're one of them, the American Rescue Act, started doing co-responder models. So throughout Stearns County and all of St. Cloud, we have co-responders in addition to some of those other places. We're not sure what we're going to do if we haven't come up with together with some other funding mechanism when those funds run out in 2026. But there are across the state some other initiatives to try to help with de-escalation in that way.
Good. Ms. Bailey, to the question that Senator Rutke raised on that 1.2 or 2 point, how much is in your, what'd you get there?
2.7.
2.7?
Okay. Chair Hoffman, Senator Aki, I will have to look into that specific item. I thought last year we canceled those funds and reappropriated them, but I may be thinking about a different item. The reason why I wanted to come up on the bigger request is if we're talking about fiscal year 25 funds that might cancel, that's a more challenging request just because even as Commissioner mentioned, a lot of the items are in process and they may not be spent right now, but we're planning to spend them by the end of the fiscal year and they may be out for an RFP or we may be deciding, you know, the grantees to fund, and so they're at all different statuses. So it takes us a while to gather from each area what exactly is the status of each grant. But we can do that. I just wanted to come up and clarify that that is a somewhat challenging request.
But to the original question that Senator Rutke gave out, it sounds like that is ringing a bell. The canceling and respending. I mean, it's there. But if you could just clarify that, and then. That just prompted me saying, because if you remember right, 2 years ago, two things stick in my mind. We had, this committee had to pay for something 3 times, and you admitted that to us.
I deny it.
You deny that. and the other one was the 1.825, which I believe we just kept saying all the time. So that's why I prompted that. So thank you. Thank
yes,
you,
Chair Hoffman, I think it's a good exercise to do, certainly, because we don't want money going to the bottom line. So.
Paul, anything else you want to?
Well, Mr. Chair, in a way, yes. I'm starting to hear the common theme of we need to tax more people, and I have a big problem with that. I think we got enough money, but I would love to. You know, we took the bill last week, Mr. Chair, and we returned that to sender.
Yeah, we did
the budget, but I would still like to have. You know, I can go back to that budget proposal, and I would say I want the governor and the commissioner to sit here and explain to us what's going on behind the scenes, because I do think I've heard this cancel and reappropriate term used. Let's find out what's all going on. I think there's money there to do this. It's just not getting to the right spots. So I'd like to have people come in and take a deep dive.
I love this. If you had an idea who, I love this. This is what I like about this committee. You look around the spectrum of this, right? There's, you know, Senator Rutke thinks that we can dive down and find that. You know, I'm with May Quaid. I mean, I love this. This is real human beings we're talking about. Oh, I'm always for that. Ask Abler. There's not a good tax rate. What was this years ago? What, you know, there's no way to get to this, John. You can't raise. There's not enough billionaires to raise taxes on that. Remember that? So, I got Senator Gruenhagen is the last one, unless you guys want to tee up Senator Rasmussen, Senator Abler, Senator May Quaid. Anybody? We're good. Thank you, Elise, for doing that. Senator Gruenhagen, to the points on the table.
Yeah, we're on the spectrum, I'll tell you that. No.
We are.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I probably got a little more of a comment than a question at this particular time, is because, you know, once you start observing this political process, you know, I was on the school board for 16 years, and then I came up here, and a
Glenn, how many years are you on the school board?
16.
Okay, I just want to make sure I get that right.
Okay.
So
I'll
I
send-
said 15 one time.
I'll send you an email. Anyway, pretty soon you begin to see what's really going on. And what I've seen, and I can give you about 8 to 10 examples if you want, is that Minnesota is great at passing regulations and laws to artificially inflate the cost to local units of government. I mean, exponentially. So the other thing that would be very helpful for lay people is if we had comparative data with other states to build similar facilities. And if we're higher or lower, then we find out why. But as lay people, unless we have some type of a comparative data, it's pretty hard for us to, other than to sit here and say, well, it's $300 million. You know what I mean? Now, one of the things I picked up from your testimony, and again, if you want 8 to 10 examples right off the top of my head, I can give them to you, but I'll wait. You know, there's a law that says, if I heard that correctly, that after the building is so old, you got to knock it down and build a new one. Is that correct?
Regarding the jails?
Sorry,
Sorry,
Senator,
Mr. Chair
that's okay.
and Senator Grin-Haggett, yes. Commissioner Snell could tell you more of that specifically, but yes.
Well,
when it hits a certain age, then we're supposed to do something.
Yeah, and, you know, Mr. Chair and members, maybe that law needs to be modified. Maybe we need to go out and inspect a building and see if it's still usable before we knock it down and then cost local taxpayers and everybody else millions of dollars. Again, in housing, in every area, Minnesota pursues a policy of adding additional regulations and costs to construction. We just did it in the last biennium. So I can give you specific examples, but it sure would be nice to have comparative data to build a similar facility in other states. Because I got a hunch that Minnesota is artificially inflating the price, in many cases unnecessarily. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you. I was going to say, Glenn, we can do the labor and industry one here. I thought in the report there was some comparative data pieces that are in there, but if you want to do that, we're going to go to Magnuson. Mr. Magnuson, Councilor Magnuson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senators. There is, we talked about it briefly in the report, and there wasn't a complete agreement as to how to read the data, but you can look at, particularly at Oregon and Washington, where they pay very large fines for not being able to meet reasonable timelines. So unfortunately, it took the state of Washington to be fined $100 million before they came up with a funding program of $1.3 billion to get to the level that they needed in order to be able to serve people there. And we do not want to wait till there's a federal consent decree telling us how to spend the money. I mean, the fact that you can't have no investment, I mean, I understand that things are lean, but there needs to be, like Commissioner Clark said, a plan at this point.
You know, it's interesting you say that. I was around when the Jensen settlement occurred in Cambridge, right? And the 352 times the individual was restrained, 5-point restraint. And yet the whole time, it took a federal judge to say, you can't do this, folks, right?
It's a shame.
It's a shame. Why did you take that when here, when you said, $100 million, they invested then $1.3 billion, wouldn't that be something? Versus taking it from DHS, let's invest in that. So thank you for that reminder. And yes, Oregon and Washington are in their report, so there's a little bit of comparative. So Senator Makway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Magnuson, what was the funding mechanism that they used for this?
For
Mr. Magnuson.
In Washington State, I don't know the details of the funding mechanism, but I think a lot of that was bonding. A lot of it was other funding. But, I mean, there was a large appropriations made. I'd have to go back and look at the precise funding mechanism.
And that, they specifically study that in the report, right? I mean, that's so somebody, maybe Dr. Stevens can send us that information, or Dan, that's a great question. Where did that investment come from? First you get sued, you get a consent decree for $100 million, and then, now we need to invest, right? I mean, I'm hearing where you're going with that.
Most of it was tax dollars, I'm afraid. To respond to that.
It was all tax dollars.
I wouldn't say all, but if I recall, there was a lot of tax dollars to go into funding projects like that.
Yeah. Sue, do you remember
tax
that?
dollars?
No?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Cl- Yeah.
Senator, it's tax dollars.
It was straight up tax dollars. Interesting. I don't know. I know where you're going with this. I like that, so.
Well, of course it's tax dollars, but.
That's, who else was after Senator Grunhagen? Did you, Rasmussen? We got Abler, Rasmussen, then Abler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't want to, this isn't a question, it's just a item for members of the committee to think about as this session continues. And Mr. Chair, I'm just struck by the fact that, we're talking about some really big needs and investments at direct care and treatment.
Yeah.
And, I don't know what the date is. It's February 24th.
Yeah.
And, we haven't had the direct care and treatment CEO yet come before the committee, I believe, for the session. And, coming on July 1, it'll be a part-time board that'll be charged with running direct care and treatment. And I just think, given we've seen the complexities, the different stakeholders are involved, the counties, mental health advocates, prosecutors, criminal justice system, that, again, I think we should have a clinician who is, running the clinical side of direct care and treatment. But I really do think that conversations like this that aren't going to get solved in a single session, that need someone who has the political authority of the governor to be able to convene and to put policy proposals forward, I think is just underscoring the point of why I'll be continuing to push to have that commissioner who can convene and lead on these types of issues. And again, just wanted to put that out there as we're talking about this, Mr. Chair. Thank
Sounds
you.
like the bill we heard last year. That was our only, Senator Abler, the only contentious bill we had last year was this debate over the DCT makeup. But it's like, it's there now. So to that point, we're there. Senator Abler, final words, and then we're going to head home.
Well, thanks. This has actually been a good discussion. I drew a picture, Mr. Chair. I wish I had bigger markers, but in Europe, buildings last hundreds of years. The buildings that we're calling obsolete aren't about to fall down. We've just changed our tastes. We've changed something. Mr. Chair, we control building codes in this state, or requirements. I don't know if the feds care what our jails look like. I know that corrections does and somebody does here, but before we go building a bunch of dinosaurs, I think the Wright County thing is partly already obsolete before it even goes up. I think we need to think through more, what are we building? And I apparently got some cheers to my people on the right here, or left, whatever, about that. But if Sheriff Stewart is right and half of his guests don't belong in a jail, then let's not put them in a jail. Let's not build enough jail cells to put them in jails. And so in my little, I always got C's in art, but so here's like a jail. So maybe you need to build a new jail somewhere or not. But if you actually took the two people from a cell away and kind of made them nicer, and I think some of the plumbing could be updated, but I mean, jails. But then you could make some other places that are, put a wing on the Wright County one or the Anoka one that's a step-down facility. That could be kind of nice. And I drew a picture. Here's the jail one, and here's a little building, one-story building with some windows, little flowers there, Mr. Chair. And then what got me going on this was Commissioner Clark's thing, talking about in the community, these little houses, if they're group homes or whatever, to move people back. The goal is to actually restore them to go to work and live their lives. And I just think we're on the wrong track. And I think if we think the answer is 50 beds up a DCT somewhere, wherever, and I think we're on the wrong track. And I think that to say the Miller building is worth nothing is like just foolish. And to say that there's those 36 beds up in Cambridge that are twin homes that could be something, you're not going to put, people in restraints there, but you're going to use it. I don't know why corrections gets to declare things obsolete when we don't have any money. We don't have any money. And if you're going to get more money, I don't think we're going to put the first dollars building some more facilities like this. We want to buy something else with it. And this has been interesting for me. You've kind of opened up my mind. But I encourage the counties and the department and NAMI and whoever to realize you're already spending money on people in the wrong place, and you're maintaining those buildings. Now you want to build more of the wrong places to put staff, to have staff with them we don't have, and then still have all these other issues there. And I have to think that who's ever making us quit tear these places down and could be persuaded, well, what if we build kind of cool, newer ones to help the other places and offload some of those expenses in a shared way. Anoka County wants to spend $250 million on building another dinosaur thing. Wright County is about to do that. So don't tell me, counties, you haven't got any money. We're about to spend it on things that we're going to rue once we go like, what do we do? Anyway, that's my, I think this is, can we just think about this as a committee and as people that are watching this and get a better way?
Yeah.
I mean, and we can work with Senator Latz and whoever else about that. We've already gone that way, and it's the law of the land.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so let's, as human service people, let's pull them out of the jail system. And this first place is locked. They don't get to go hang around. But they're going to be there safe and treated and whatever. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Save that picture. I want to see that in a. It's that thing Senjum was talking about this years ago. There was what's the transition? What's that seamless transition for people out on that? So I'm with you on that. Everybody, thank you. Members, Senator Utke, you get the final word and then adjourn us.
Mr. Chair, I don't need the final word, and I probably didn't need this, but Senator Abler is 100% correct. We're talking about a number of the bigger counties down here in the size. We're having the same thing take place out in rural Minnesota where we're building a number of new jails. Absolutely not needed. I mean, we've got some ideas on some use for some of those buildings, but it's going right down the road that Senator Abler is traveling. Yeah. And we need to really investigate that because we don't have the money tree out back, but we've got plenty of money here to do the right thing and quit wasting it. So.
Help us
I'm
find
all on board.
You're on board? Good. We look forward to talking with you lots. EMQ, you get final say and then adjourn us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's quite boring. I was just wondering if maybe we could get to this committee where this lives. Is it DOC rules? Did the legislature give authority to the DOC to make these rules or not? And I would love to know from the counties too, like, we actually don't want to build a new jail in Stearns. We have a lot of other things we could build, or if they're like, actually ours is falling apart, it's not safe to be in there, it's filled with asbestos, we'd like, I'd love to know if there's a bunch of county commissioners that are like, please don't make us do this. I would be more than happy to say, okay.
You want to follow up with all of us and actually, maybe you can get Matt, that Matt Freeman guy to maybe show you around these different rooms. That would be kind of good.
If I could, I would like to respond to one of Senator
You sure can. Go ahead.
Earlier questions when Senator
you get the final say.
Dr. Stevens was here. And that is, when you were wondering why is there a deadline? And you were absolutely right. It's because you want somebody to get something done, right? And I think people understand that 48 hours may not, there's nothing magical about that amount of time, but we're here because of that 48-hour deadline. If that deadline weren't here and DHS, a couple of years ago hadn't wanted to bring this up because they wanted to avoid the litigation that comes with not having enough capacity, I don't know that this conversation would have happened. So I would encourage you to think about the deadline as a way of keeping this elevated. Even if you know that they may not be able to meet it, and maybe you want to suspend that for a little bit, but I think that reality needs to hang over, or this could just go the way of so many other crises.
To that point, thank you. Members, Wednesday, Senator Abler, you got Community Care Hub. Senator Mohammed, Senate File 1146. You got a 240. You get to actually have a 245D provider's license conversation. That'd be good. Senator Abler.
Yeah, and so on Wednesday, could the department comment about, we had a very horrible hearing I've not been so shaken as a hearing as I was on the CFSS hearing.
I hear you.
Could they update us on what's the latest status is and what they tend to do differently on Wednesday? That would be really nice.
That would be wonderful. Ms. Grom, can you hear that? Because Senator Fateh's bill was specifically to the CFSS conversation, Jim, and I appreciate that. That was, so maybe they can give us that update on that. And then Utke's got 2 bills up on that. Members, thank you, Sue and Terrell and everybody for coming, Kevin and Dr. Stevens. Thank you so much, everybody. We are adjourned.